Hello and welcome to The Price of Music, the show that looks at the money behind the music industry with me, Steve Lamack, and Music Allies Head of Insight, Stuart Dredge. Welcome back. How was your holiday?
It was good. It was Norfolk Broads, sun all the week, and very relaxing. Didn't do any work at all.
No, nothing. No internet connection out there, is there? No Wi-Fi hotspots.
That's it. When you're in the middle of abroad with like nothing, you can't really check your email, which is it's just bracing. I've
just got this three men in a boat kind of image of you now, which I don't know.
It's a trip that my dad and his friends have been doing it's been going for like 46 years, and it's all these men go on Norfolk Broads and go sailing and drink lots of wine and gin. And now they take their sons along to stop them falling into the Broads when they're drunk. But it's nice. It's nice to spend time with my dad and see his friends. And
I don't know, when you got back, did you think? Because I was thinking by about the Tuesday that it felt like the entire music industry had conspired to break all of its big stories while you were away. I don't know what your inbox was like when you got back, but I can't believe that Universal Music Group and TikTok waited until you were out of the way before agreeing a new deal, which we'll come to later on. But a lot happened while you were away. We'll touch on some of it in this episode. Let's start with a story which actually we've been following this for a while now, an investigation into the current financial plight of hundreds of grassroots live venues has led to a government report which is calling for a new levy on arena and stadium ticket sales, while also concluding that, and I'm quoting, a cut in VAT is urgently needed to support grassroots music venues across the country. This is, you might remember, we spoke a few weeks ago now about the Culture, Media and Sports Select Committee, which was taking evidence about the struggles facing venues and musicians at grassroots level, including they did a series of roundtable meetings with some key promoters around the country. And then there was a big face-to-face committee meeting with a selection of industry experts at the House of Commons. And based on all the opinions and stories they heard, they've turned all this evidence into a report which presents their findings and proposals. It was officially published on Saturday. Just some of the key points which we should highlight, I think. One of which was, and again, I'll quote this: we recommend that the live music industry introduce a voluntary levy on arena and stadium tickets no later than September 2024 to support grassroots music venues, artists and promoters. If a voluntary levy is unable to be agreed by September 2024, the government should introduce a statutory levy at the earliest subsequent opportunity. That's interesting. We'll come to that in a second. Also, as I mentioned, they're fully behind introducing a temporary cut to VAT based on venue capacity to stimulate grassroots music activity, and one or two other things away from the financial side of running a live venue, including trying to put the agent of change principle on a statutory footing at the earliest opportunity. Agent of change is, you might remember we spoke about this, it's where developers, if there's a venue, rather than developers building flats next door and then the new residents complaining about the noise which ends up with the venue closing down, it becomes the responsibility of the people who are developing the area around the venue to soundproof the buildings, or at least to make sure that the venue can continue to exist without complaint. I don't know what you made of all this, Stuart. It's a long report, but those are the big issues, I think, probably, aren't they? Particularly the bit about the levy.
Definitely, yeah. And it's kind of, we've been talking about the Music Venue Trust, haven't we? The charity that's been campaigning for this. And I sort of read the report saying basically everything it's been campaigning for, the MPs have pretty much backed, haven't they, the levy? So the other thing I thought was that there were a lot of industry reactions. I got sent all the kind of reaction statements with the report. And in contrast to the same committee's streaming inquiry, where there was quite a lot of argument after it, this seems to have been pretty warmly received across the board, I think.
Mm.
Like industry bodies are saying, we like this idea. I think there's some probably the arenas and stadiums people are not so keen on the levy idea, but otherwise it's had been quite a warm reception, and people are. I think people are very happy that MPs have seen fit to say, right, grassroots music venues struggling is a problem and something needs to be done about it. I think in a way, just the broad brush of there's a report about this from politicians that's going to be talked about, that's made everyone say, yes, look, we told you there was a problem and now it's being acknowledged. So that's some of the good vibes around it, I guess.
Mm. It was very, I have to say, it was very comprehensive. I mean, they appear to
Mm.
have turned this round. I don't know how long select committee reports usually take, but they turned this round pretty quickly. I think they understand the urgency of the
Mm.
situation and what needs to be done, which again, I guess is why they're maybe have inserted, basically deadline dates into some of the wording of what they're
Mm.
recommending. But you're right. I mean, there's a lot of stuff here which has been talked about at grassroots level. As you say, the Music Venue Trust have long supported a £1 levy on tickets venues above 5,000 capacity. I think it's pretty widely agreed across the whole industry that a VAT cut on tickets would provide more economic security or stimulus, especially amongst small venues. That agent of change, I think, is really good. And a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned the FAC's 100% campaign, which
Mm.
dealt with merchandise. That's another one which they're backing that and suggesting that there should be more support for the FAC's campaign, which is basically aimed at allowing artists to retain all the money from t-shirt and merch sales. So they seem to have really listened. They obviously did a lot of research, and we'll see what happens next. The other thing which I noticed in there was that, and this is something we've been speculating about for, well, since we started this, I think, was they've finally gone public and said they would like to see a fan-led review of live music, which again, that's interesting,
I think so.
because who
Yeah.
knows what that will throw up.
Well, I was thinking about this as a fan, really, and thinking about. I went to see Blur at Wembley last summer, so a big stadium gig. I'd be really happy as a fan if a quid of my ticket to that went to grassroots venues.
Mm,
And so, if we have this kind of fan-led review, we'll get some of that data maybe about fans going, yeah, you know what, I like this idea, and that might help this kind of happen. I suppose the other thing I thought was interesting was because I think we always have to say this caveat, don't we? Like this is a parliamentary committee; it's not the government, so they can say what they think the government should do, but the government
mm,
might not do it. And
mm,
but the fact that they want this levy to be a voluntary thing agreed by the industry kind of opens up the possibility that it could be done regardless of what the government think about this and who the government is at any point in time, because we may have an election.
mm,
So it does. It does. Although the government would have to step in and make them do it if no one agrees. I do wonder if there's going to be some movement now because they've said, right, get together, sort this out, figure out how it works.
mm.
And I don't know. I think, I suppose, well, you watched the hearing as did I. The debate seems to be, well, is it the venues that are responsible for doing it? Is it the ticketing companies? Is it the bands like Enter Shikari? Like there's some discussion about how you do it, but it does feel like there is maybe the movement swinging behind, let's do this, and if we can figure out the details. So yeah, I
Mm.
mean, it feels positive to me, and it feels like, I mean, my nowadays I'm of the age where I do end up going to a lot of big gigs, but I went my all the bands I fell in love with when I first started gigging, it was all in those small venues, and it was so important to me as a music fan and so important as artists. So I think really, I'm just like you said, I'm glad there's urgency around this, and I'm glad that there's some kind of momentum towards let's not just let them carry on closing.
I do think
So yeah,
I think it's a real catalyst moment. I think
mm,
if people take this seriously, and obviously, as you say, these are still just recommendations at this point. But you're right. I think the language they're using, particularly around the levy, suggests that they would like to see something happen sooner rather than later.
mm,
All I can add is, as chair of Live, the live music trade body. We have a board meeting next week where I imagine this report will be discussed at some length, I would think. Anything I can share from that afterwards, I'll let you know. And I don't know whether this meant that this was a good week or a bad week for top dog promoters Live Nation to announce a bumper year. But Live Nation has announced that its revenue was up by over a fifth, I think.
Yeah, so Live Nation, the juggernaut of live music, because it's a promoter. It's also got Ticketmaster, the ticketing company. So yeah, it made $3.8 billion in the first quarter of this year, up 21%. 23 million fans attended its events, which is also up 21%. It sold 77 million tickets. And there was this quote saying, global fan demand is stronger than ever. More artists are out on the road and more venues are being added to bring them together, which kind of fuels that debate about smaller venues. Although we have to say, I suppose, like Live Nation, it's not just about stadiums and arenas. It does have small venues, small clubs. Its money comes from the big tours as well. But yeah, it does. I think every time Live Nation announces great financial results, the message it puts out is this is brilliant signs for live music recovering after COVID. Mm-hmm. But people who are kind of been campaigning about grassroots venues will also see that as, well, look, there's lots of money coming in at the top end. So how do we make sure that trickles down? So in a way, it's just going to filter into that debate. But the other thing, which we have we talked about this or not? About that, I think we did. The Department of Justice in the US is maybe going to announce a probe into Live Nation, and whether it's too dominant and where they operate. And in their earnings call after they announced the financials, they did talk about this, and they said that they don't think it's going to be an attempt to break them up, to separate out Live Nation and Ticketmaster again. But the fact that they talked about it kind of suggests that's going to be announced, and that's going to be quite a big challenge for this company. They're going to have the US regulators investigating them and criticizing some of the ways they do business that's been making them money. So yeah, kind of a good results, but there's definitely a looming thing. What was it? I lost the word. A looming. I don't know what it is. Headache. Maybe it's the word I was grasping for.
I don't know as well. I mean, they obviously, as I said, this was a bumper year. I don't think you can be absolutely 100% certain that it will be a bumper year again next year. So much of live music depends on who is out there playing and whether the major artists are doing major tours, I'd imagine. So it'll be interesting to see whether this is, an upward trend, which will just carry on, or whether there are still some bumps in the road ahead, even for someone as massive as Live Nation.
Yeah, I think I know what's really the driver here, though. Is they reformed the Black Crows for their tour, which I'm seeing this week, and I had to shoe on that in. But that was a Live Nation play the hits reform driven tour. So they're in my eyes, regulatory worries, all the other things, but they reformed the Black Crows, so they can't be all bad.
Where are you seeing the Black Crows? Well, by the way, well done for shoehorning in the Black Crows again. Where are Black Crows playing?
I think it's the Hammersmith Apollo, or whatever it's called now. Is it the Eventim Apollo? I'm going to lose track of what these names are. But yeah, so it's kind of a mid to upper venue, which should be nice.
And this is a hits tour, is it? Play the hits.
Well, it was. So they did a hits tour. They did a play the first album tour, and this is like they've got a new album out tour. But
right.
To relate it to people who don't follow the Black Crows, which may be a small minority of our audience, I suspect, but they split up really horribly, and the brothers fell out, and it was money related. It was the kind of split you think they're never getting back together. So as a fan, when that happens to a band you love, and then they do get back together, I've seen them a couple of times, and it doesn't seem to be about the money. They seem to be enjoy it on stage and enjoying playing music. So it's one of those things when a band you think, no, they've burnt all their bridges and then some. When they come back, there's a real joy in that. Like I'm seeing them when I thought I wouldn't.
Is there a consistent narrative running through all the bands you like that at some point somebody leaves or they split up? Were you one of the ones weeping when it turned out Graham Coxon was leaving Blur, and crying happy tears the moment Graham Coxon was back in Blur?
I saw them. They played the Astoria, I think, and it was the first gig without him. Wasn't it a guy from The Verve, Nick McCabe, stepped in, or someone?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I think so.
And it was fine. But yeah, I don't know. There are some bands. The Black Crows isn't one of them. They've always had a revolving cast around the brothers. But there's some bands where you're like, those are the four members, and without one of them, it's not right. Or without all three members of Bananarama, it's not right. Without all four members of Blur, it's not right. So I don't know. That's. I'm glad he came back. But again, Blur, like at Wembley last year, it was Generation X day out, but also that sense of, well, there was a point in time when maybe you think you wouldn't see Blur again, and then they came back. So, there's that joy of the Reformation. I know often it's about how much money were bands offered, but there is a real joy when someone you think you wouldn't ever get a chance to see again comes back.
It's interesting how some music it goes around in cycles. I think we're going particularly through a 20-year cycle where things from 20 years ago are suddenly very popular, which brings us to this, which I don't know if you noticed this, which it's a story which caught my eye while you were away last week, about Mr. Brightside by the Killers, which has now officially become the best-selling single not to make number one. So it's the top-selling single which didn't get to the top of the chart, and it's taken over from the previous holder of this record, which was, do you know what it was previously?
Oh, do you know? I didn't, but I looked it up.
And it
And
is
Wonderwall by Oasis, which is almost as
Wonderwall.
exciting as the record that kept Wonderwall off number one. Do you know that one?
No, crikey, is this gonna form the basis of our pop quiz, which we're
I
intending to
catch
do
you.
at some point?
It was Robson and Jerome kept Wonderwall off number one.
There you go. But the Killers, right? This is, I mean, proof that singles or hits in the streaming age never go away. This is what this proves, isn't it? Because because originally Brightside went to number 10 20 years ago this month, but it's been selling ever since. And I don't think it's ever been out of the chart, has it? I looked it up the other day. It was number 52 in the iTunes charts, was Mr. Brightside by the Killers. And last year, according to Music Week magazine, 2023 was Mr. Brightside's biggest year of streams with, wait for it, 79.97 million plays in 2023. And in 2024, say Music Week, the track is accelerating further with average combined weekly sales and streams of Mr. Brightside up by 23%. So in combined sales and streaming, the total for Mr. Brightside so far, 5.57 million, including 1 million actual sale. 5.57 million. We'll have to calculate at some point how much cash that has made them over the past 20 years.
It's one of those things. It's become one of those standards, hasn't it? Like it's a wedding standard now. It's like a Come On Eileen of its generation. I think it's played at every wedding. But that's not a criticism. My family weddings when I was a kid were always Come On Eileen. But yeah, it's when you see him play it now, like it resounds with kids. It's just kind of it's crossed all those boundaries and not bad. Do you remember when they first came out? I don't know who wrote it. It was The Enemy or something. Where it said that they were like kind of if Shed 7 came from Las Vegas. Like Shed 7 was the comparison they had, wasn't it, when it first came out? And you think, wow, from that to this, it's. I love Shed 7, so that's not a derogatory remark about them. But yeah, the Killers are still popular.
We did a gig, a Six Music gig once when the very early doors for the Killers, and the Killers supported Sea Power. That was the gig which we recorded for Six Music.
Wow.
The success of Mr. Brightside might have contributed to this. Much like Live Nation, here's another story of revenues going through the roof. And it's our old friends at Universal Music Group. They are reporting increased revenues, but also apparently the boss of Universal, Lucian Grange, is in line for a £119 million payout. That's a bonus.
Yeah, that is. That's a Christmas. Well, it's not even a Christmas bonus, is it? It's a quarterly bonus. But yeah, so the Universal Music. I mean, it's like it's a story we do every 3 months, isn't it? Universal Music's revenues are up again. So they made about 2.2 billion quid in the first quarter of this year, which is up 5.8%. We're interesting, like their recorded music stuff was up 3.4%, but publishing was the big grower, up 16.7% year on year. Right. So Universal's publishing business is doing really well. And then the other thing, which is all tied into this, is the morning of their financial results. They settled their dispute with TikTok in beautiful financial timing. So the morning they announced that we've made up with TikTok and it's all fine now. And in the afternoon, had their financial call where they had to talk about how much was it hurting them and was it going to be bad for their business. So there was a nice
Right.
synergy of timing there.
Do you think contrive to happen on the same day? Do you think?
I mean, companies do. I think companies, when they have financial results coming out, there is an advantage to saying, "And here is our news," which, if you think if it's gonna kind of color how analysts talk about you, because I think they would have faced a lot of questions about how much money you're losing from not being on TikTok. What's the impact? And then instead they could say, actually, we've signed a new deal, and they did talk about it. They said, yeah, we're going to get lots more money from it, significantly more revenues. Which I was actually working out. So when they fell out, Universal said that TikTok was about 1% of their revenues came from TikTok, which is about
Right.
96 million quid last year. So it was kind of small in the scheme of the company, but they say it'll be a lot more now. So yeah, it was all kind of positive news, and then came those follow-on stories about the kind of the bonus for their boss, which was maybe less
Mhm.
positive for Universal.
It's a massive payout. I mean, the thing is, how much do you think record companies like to show off? I mean, is it? I mean, obviously, it's important that they're to them that they're doing well and making money, but is it? Is it? Are we? Is there a sort of? Are we getting to the stage now where everyone's sort of posturing in public? Look at the size of our profits, and we'll do pretty much anything to maintain that level of money making largesse.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's difficult if you're a public company like Universal is, like Spotify is. You kind of have to big up how well the business is doing. Like you have to be that
Mm.
kind of because investors expect it, and if they don't have confidence in you, your share price goes down, and that's so it is caught because I think like it is for Spotify really. When these companies say we're making loads of money, often the immediate rejoinder is artists going, "We're not making any money from streaming. Look at this; it's terrible."
Mm.
And but to their shareholders, they have to boast. But then to the musicians, there has to be a thing about it's success for you. So it's a weird tightrope you have to walk when you're a public company, I think. Um, and the
Yeah.
bonus stuff, the shares bonus, there's a wider thing going on here, I think, and this is where I'm not so up on it because it's across all areas of business, not just music. But there is kind of increasing protests, I think, when big corporations pay massive bonuses or salary things to their bosses. And I think in the Universal's case, what sparked the news stories is this company called Glass Lewis, who kind of give advice to investors about how to vote at like annual general meetings of companies. And they were the ones who were saying, actually, this is too big a bonus. You should vote against it if you own shares in UMG. Um,
Really.
so it's not in even a music story. It's like how much how much should corporations be paying their executives if they're doing really well? Um,
Mhm.
and they've kind of and Spotify as well. Whenever Danny Lek, the CEO there, sells shares, there's always a headline saying he's made this much money, and it is part of the discourse now. I think if you run a big company in music and you're rewarding your executives bigly, to quote Donald Trump, which is not something I like to do out of fun, it's going to spark debate. But
Mm.
yeah, I mean, Universal Music is growing well. And the thing, whenever we talk about them not financially, whether it's TikTok, whether it's AI, they're very much using that power to try and shape the next evolution for the industry at the moment. So it's not just about how much money they're making, they're trying to flex those muscles to make sure that AI is regulated in the way music industry wants, to make sure that um, TikTok pays more. So you're kind of seeing them exert that muscle as well as boast about it, I suppose.
So they've sorted out their deal finally with TikTok, which means that TikTok have got more time to spend on another headache, which they have at the moment, which is with the American government. TikTok has filed a lawsuit aiming to block a law in America that would ban TikTok unless it's sold by its Chinese parent company. We touched on this before, but pick us up. Well, we've had the potential lawsuit. This is TikTok's response.
Yeah. So President Biden signed this bill that would give ByteDance, the Chinese company, 12 months to sell TikTok or face a ban. Um, and TikTok actually at the time it said we're going to challenge this in court, so they were very open. We're going to challenge this, and last week it sued the US government. And what they're saying is that the sale is, and this is the quote, simply not possible, not commercially, not technologically, not legally. And they're also saying that forcing a sale would be unconstitutional, which is one of those words. It's like a sort of a big thing in the US. Like it goes against the First Amendment about freedom of speech to have that banned, people using. And I think I may have said this before when we talked about it, but we're in this really strange situation now because when Donald Trump was last president, in the closing months of his presidency, he was trying to do exactly this, force it to be sold to a US company. And it didn't happen by the time he was kicked out. And then Joe Biden came in and knocked the idea on the head. But now Biden wants TikTok to be sold or banned. But if he loses the election later this year, Trump may come back in. And now Trump is against a ban or sale. So he may come back in and get rid of it. So in a weird way, TikTok is in this situation where what it wants to do is overturn the ban in the courts. So, that's why it's filed this lawsuit. It wants to overturn it. But the other effect of that is it does string things out long enough for there maybe to be a new president who has a different view. Although predicting what Donald Trump will say or do in a year's time is quite risky. Like he's not the most consistent person. But yeah, but again, like we're saying, I mean, TikTok has settled its music headache with Universal, but it's going to be spending a lot of time and energy fighting this in the US, and whether that takes its focus away from the actual app itself and what it does. And that could give an opportunity to some of its rivals. So Facebook Meta, Facebook's owner, and Instagram, they do a lot with short video. They're hoping to capitalize if TikTok slips. And YouTube as well has YouTube Shorts, it's short video. So there's kind of competitors circling, watching for any loss of focus as it fights its battle and ready to swoop in and say, well, we're much more safe. Come with us.
Finally, for this episode, now I hadn't seen this until you mentioned it. Spotify is planning to put some song lyrics behind a paywall. What sort of lyrics? Which lyrics? And why are they doing this?
Yeah, only the good lyrics behind a paywall, the bad ones.
Did you mention it because they're putting the Black Crowes song lyrics in? All the Black Crowes song lyrics are going behind a paywall. Is that Black Crowes and Dolly Parton? They're all behind the paywall. That's why we're kicking off about this.
That's it. Yeah, it's not. No one else cares apart from me. No, it's one of those weird ones where it hasn't been announced, but some people who are free users started noticing that they couldn't see lyrics because on Spotify, when you're on the screen of now playing, you can just scroll down and it will show you the lyrics. And they noticed it wasn't happening. It was saying instead go and upgrade to a subscription. So that was leaked and that got reported, and people were saying, I think the official comment is, well, we're just testing things with different people in different countries. So it's not an official announcement of we are putting lyrics behind the paywall. They just seem to be testing how. Well, I guess what they're doing is they'll do it somewhere for some people, and then if like a bunch of them then upgrade to a subscription, they'll think, right, okay, that works. So we can do this more widely, and it might help us, boost subscriptions, which is part of a wider trend. So there's a few some of the new features Spotify's done last year have been premium only. You need a subscription to use them, and that feels like a little trend that's happening now where some of the new features that you get in streaming are going to be paid only. And if you're on a free user, it'll be kind of encouraging you to say, well, if you upgrade, look, now you can get this, now you can get that. So that's interesting. The other thing about this I thought was interesting is that there's actually a bit of a big argument brewing in the US with Spotify and music publishers. And we could do that another day probably, because it's about changes in the way Spotify pays royalties to publishers that may see them. But anyway, lyrics are publishing. Like lyrics are publishers' responsibility; they earn the royalties from them. So in a way, if Spotify proves that lyrics are something that people will upgrade to a subscription for, it kind of shows you the value of lyrics, the value of the kind of song lyrics. But that may actually give the publishers some ammunition in their arguments over royalties to say, look, lyrics are important to you when you want to get more subscriptions. So they should be in, our song. So it's one of those things where it could be good because if they get more subscribers, that's more money to pay out to artists and songwriters. But it could also give a little bit more ammunition in this debate over should they pay songwriters a bit more because lyrics have got this strategic value to them. So it's kind of interesting. It could have a little blowback effect. But yeah, for now, For now, I think the Black Clothes lyrics are worth paying for, obviously. But yeah, I mean, do you know? I don't know
I don't suppose you need them, do you? You probably know you probably know them all off by heart.
I am very much a sing words in the approximate area of what they originally were live. But I mean, I don't know what you think, but I never was that good at lyrics in the past. I would just, but one thing streaming has brought is that ability to kind of almost Disney way. You know, remember the Disney thing with the bouncing ball and the lyrics for songs? Like the way to see lyrics when you're listening to music has actually made me like read them much more than I used to in the past when I was owned. So that there is a thing of streaming has been quite good in that sense. So yeah, I mean, I'll be interested to see where this goes, I suppose.
I do like the idea that Spotify, if this was some sort of way, another stealth way of making a little bit of extra money, if they make the money and then the publishers come around and say, oh no, you better give that money back to us. And so everyone's even again, then we have to wait to see what else they can charge us for somewhere down the line. Yeah. Anyway, that's it for this time. Thank you very much, as always, for listening. And if you have enjoyed the show, please do subscribe to us in your podcast app. And if you get a moment, give us a review and a rating, because it really helps us get the word out there. And of course, if you have a question which you'd like answered on the show, email us at this address. Stuart?
It's thepriceofmusicpodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you very much, everyone. Cheerio.